power, betrayal, and the weight of an empire on the brink. Welcome to Chapter 12 of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. What happens when a kingdom renowned for its might falls into the hands of ambition, rebellion, and fleeting leadership? From the tragic downfall of Aurelian to the improbable rise of Tacitus and the relentless conquests of Probus, this episode reveals the chaos and resilience that defined Rome's turbulent middle years. We'll explore the heroes and the usurpers, the political intrigue that reshaped an empire, and the visionary rulers who dared to dream of a republic's revival. Could their efforts hold back the tide of decline, or were they merely delaying the inevitable? Stick around to uncover the astonishing twists and enduring lessons from one of Rome's most dramatic chapters.
Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to crack open Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire.
Ah, excellent choice.
Yeah, we're looking specifically at Chapter 12.
Yeah.
And, well, you're in for a wild ride through Roman history. You know, you'll meet emperors who rise and fall faster than you can say Veni, Vidi, Vici.
That's right.
We've got political intrigue, military might, and some personalities so out there they'd make Caligula blush.
It's a period that really highlights, I think, that struggle between the old Roman Senate and that increasingly powerful army.
Yeah.
You see these kind of like flickers, these glimmers of the Republic trying to hold on. But
all right,
let's just say the legions had other ideas.
Yeah, Gibbon kicks things off with a real head-scratcher.
Okay.
After Emperor Aurelian is assassinated, the legions do something completely unexpected. They defer to the Senate to choose the new emperor.
Yeah, it's a wild twist, especially considering the state of the empire at this point.
Right.
You got constant power struggles, economic woes, barbarian threats at the borders. It's a recipe for strongman rule. Yet, for 8 months, Rome operates without an emperor.
8 months.
Gibbon calls it an amazing period of tranquil anarchy.
Wow, you'd think everything would just grind to a halt, but Gibbon mentions that things, kept ticking over.
Right.
So was this period truly as peaceful as he suggests, or is there more to the story?
Well, Gibbon tends to romanticize the past.
Yeah.
But even he admits this interregnum was an anomaly.
Yeah.
What's fascinating, I think, is that he compares it to that legendary period after Romulus's death. The mythical founder of Rome.
Right.
It's as if the empire, in its decline, was trying to, echo the ideals of its earliest days.
Oh, interesting, like a longing for simpler times.
Perhaps.
But as you pointed out, the Rome of the 3rd century AD was a very different beast.
Completely.
It's a vast empire with a professional army, not a city-state with citizen soldiers.
That's right.
So, okay, the legions finally get impatient. They tell the Senate, all right, enough of this democracy experiment. Pick an emperor already.
Right. And the Senate, after much deliberation, lands on, I think, a surprising choice.
Tacitus.
75-year-old senator and a descendant of the famous historian, no less.
75-year-old. Talk about drawing the short straw.
Right.
I bet he was thrilled about this career change.
Oh, he was about as enthusiastic as a retiree called back for jury duty.
Oh, no.
He argued his age, his lack of military experience. Gibbon quotes Tacitus pleading with the Senate, "Are these limbs, conscript fathers, fitted to sustain the weight of armor?"
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty relatable sentiment.
Yeah, you can almost picture him trying to hide his gardening tools as the senators arrive with the purple robes.
Yeah, exactly.
But they weren't taking no for an answer.
No, they insisted they needed his wisdom, not his physical prowess. They pointed to emperors like Trajan and Hadrian, who also came to power later in life.
Okay.
So, reluctantly, Tacitus accepts the burden of empire.
Okay, so we've got a philosopher emperor on the throne.
Right.
What's his game plan? Does he try to restore the Senate's power?
He does make some attempts.
Okay.
Gibbon notes that he oversaw appointments of officials, even received appeals from courts throughout the empire.
Wow.
But the army is still the elephant in the room.
For sure.
And those tensions between these two power centers haven't magically disappeared.
Right. That's the central conflict we're seeing unfold in this chapter.
Absolutely.
So how does Tacitus handle this delicate balancing act? Does he manage to appease both the senators and the soldiers?
Well, his reign is tragically cut short.
Okay.
After only 6 months, he dies under mysterious circumstances while on campaign against the Alani.
6 months.
Barbarian invaders in Asia Minor.
He didn't even have enough time to redecorate the palace.
I know, right?
What happened? Assassination, natural causes.
Gibbon leaves it open to interpretation.
Hmm.
He mentions the harsh winter conditions, the stress of leading an army, the growing discontent among the soldiers.
Right.
It's almost as if he's inviting us to play detective and piece together the clues.
Interesting. But this sudden death throws the empire back into chaos, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tacitus's brother, Florianus, immediately tries to claim the throne.
Oh, boy.
But it's like opening Pandora's box of usurpers.
Oh.
Saturninus rises up in the east, Proculus in Gaul.
Wow.
It's a free-for-all for power.
So much for a smooth transition.
I know.
Tell us about these usurpers. Were
Yeah.
they serious contenders or just opportunists trying to grab a piece of the crumbling empire?
It was a mixed bag.
Okay.
Saturninus was a respected general. Proculus, well, Gibbon describes him as a man who loved pleasure more than he loved his country.
Oh, boy.
It highlights this key point, I think. Seizing power in Rome wasn't just about military might. It was about ambition, personality, knowing how to exploit the weaknesses of your rivals.
It's like a real-life Game of Thrones, only with togas and sandals instead of fur cloaks and direwolves.
Exactly.
So who eventually emerges from this chaotic scramble? Who manages to restore order?
Well, out of this chaos steps Marcus Aurelius Probus,
Okay.
a highly competent general serving in the East. He quickly challenges Florianus, seeing him as nothing more than a pretender to the throne.
And Probus had the clout to back up his claim, I take it.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
He was a seasoned soldier with a string of victories under his belt, and crucially, the loyalty of the legions.
Right.
Faced with this formidable opponent, Florianus's own troops abandoned him after a mere 3 months.
It seems that grabbing power is one thing, but holding onto it is a whole different ballgame.
It is.
You need more than just ambition. You need loyalty, skill, and maybe a dash of good fortune.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
And Probus seems to have had all those things.
It seems so.
He's exactly what the empire needs at that moment.
Yes.
A strong military leader, a capable administrator, and a man of action.
All the above.
Gibbon even hails him as a hero who restored peace and order to the Roman world.
You did?
That's high praise from Gibbon. Give us the specifics.
Sure.
What kind of challenges did Probus face, and how did he tackle them?
Well, for starters, the Germanic tribes are a constant thorn in the empire's side.
Right.
Probus secures the Rhine frontier, pushes back against their incursions, and even expands Roman control into territory across the Rhine.
Wow.
That's not all.
Okay.
He defeats the Sarmatians, quells a rebellion in Egypt, restores order in Gaul,
This guy.
and even deals with unrest in Isauria.
Wow, the man was busy. Sounds like he was constantly putting out fires across the empire.
He was.
And he wasn't just reacting to crises, was he? Gibbon mentions that he took a proactive approach to strengthening the empire's defenses
That's right.
and addressing some of its underlying problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the most fascinating things Probus does, I think, is institute a policy of settling barbarian captives within Roman territory.
Wow.
A bold move with both practical and symbolic implications.
It's a fascinating strategy, but it also sounds incredibly risky.
It is.
Settling former enemies within your borders. That's a recipe for trouble, isn't it?
It certainly had its challenges.
Yeah.
Probus saw it as a way to address multiple issues at once. Replenishing depleted legions, repopulating depopulated areas, potentially even assimilating these groups into Roman culture.
Right.
But as you can imagine, not all of these captive groups were thrilled about becoming Roman subjects.
Right. It highlights this constant tension within the empire, doesn't it?
Yes,
This struggle to maintain unity and control over such a vast and diverse territory.
it does.
So did Probus's experiment with barbarian settlements ultimately succeed or fail?
It's hard to say definitively.
Okay.
Some groups integrated successfully, while others rebelled against Roman authority. It's a reminder that governing a multicultural empire is a complex and delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
Even the best-laid plans can have unintended consequences.
Speaking of unintended consequences, what about Probus himself?
Right.
He seems like a highly effective emperor.
He does.
Did he die peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his grateful subjects?
Sadly, no.
Oh.
And this is where things take a rather ironic and tragic turn.
Okay.
Despite all his successes, Probus is murdered by his own troops in 282 AD.
You're kidding. The guy who restored peace and stability to the empire is killed by the very army he commanded.
I know, right?
That's insane. What on earth happened?
It seems Probus made a fatal miscalculation.
Okay.
He had this vision of disbanding the standing army, harking back to the days of citizen soldiers. A noble ideal, perhaps,
Yeah.
but completely out of touch with the realities of the late 3rd century.
Yeah, you can't just tell a professional army, thanks for your service, now go back to being farmers.
Exactly.
Right.
The legions were accustomed to a life of soldiering.
Sure.
They weren't keen on giving up their power, their status, and, let's be honest, the spoils of war.
Yeah.
So when Probus starts pushing this idea of abolishing the standing army, well, let's just say it doesn't go over well.
So they took matters into their own hands. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you.
They did.
Wow.
The details are a bit murky, but Gibbon describes a scene where Probus is overseeing a public works project.
Okay.
Perhaps the draining of a marsh.
Right.
And his troops suddenly revolt.
Oh, wow.
They attack and kill him right there, ending his reign abruptly and tragically.
What a way to go.
I know.
It's almost Shakespearean in its irony.
It is.
This great general, this restorer of peace, brought down by the very people he thought he was serving.
Right.
It really underscores the precarious nature of power, even for a Roman emperor.
It's a stark reminder that the legions who could make an emperor could also break him.
So Probus is dead, murdered by his own men.
Yes.
The empire is in turmoil yet again.
It is.
What happens next? Is there another power vacuum? Another scramble for the throne?
The Praetorian prefect, a man named Carus, steps into the void, chosen by the legions to succeed Probus.
Carus, the Praetorian prefect.
Yes.
Fill us in.
Okay.
Who was this guy, and what kind of baggage did he bring to the imperial purple?
Well, even Gibbon admits that Carus's background is shrouded in mystery.
Okay.
There are conflicting accounts about his origins. Some say he was from Illyricum, others from Gaul, or even Africa.
Wow.
It's a bit of a blank slate. But he does seem to have been a capable leader, both militarily and administratively.
So a bit of a wild card, but competent nonetheless.
Right.
What kind of emperor does he turn out to be?
He's known for his austere and straightforward nature,
Okay.
a sharp contrast to the excesses of some of his predecessors.
Right.
To give you a sense of the man, Gibbon shares an anecdote about Carus meeting with Persian ambassadors.
Okay.
They arrive at his camp expecting to find the Roman emperor in a lavish setting, surrounded by luxury.
Of course.
Instead, they find him sitting on the ground, enjoying a simple meal of bacon and peas.
That's hilarious. Talk about subverting expectations.
I know, right?
It sounds like Carus was very much a substance over style kind of leader.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He wasn't interested in pomp and ceremony.
Right.
He was a soldier at heart, focused on the practicalities of governing and waging war.
Speaking of war, he heads off to fight the Persians, right?
He does.
How does that campaign go?
Yeah.
Does he continue Rome's winning streak?
He does. Carus launches a highly successful campaign,
Okay.
defeating the Persians and capturing their capital, Ctesiphon.
Wow.
A major victory for Rome.
Carus is 2 for 2. Competent administrator, brilliant military strategist.
Yes.
But I'm sensing a but coming here.
You're right.
Okay.
Despite his triumphs, Carus's reign is cut short by a sudden and mysterious death.
Oh no, not another dead emperor. What happened this time? Did the Persians get their revenge? Was it foul play?
We're back in the realm of Roman mystery.
Ugh.
The exact cause of Carus's death is unknown.
Okay.
Gibbon cites a letter from his secretary describing a violent storm that struck the Roman camp. A sudden cry goes up that the emperor is dead,
Oh my gosh.
and then his chambers are consumed by fire.
That's suspicious, to say the least.
It is.
Was it an accident, or was there something more sinister at play? Did someone decide Carus had overstayed his welcome?
It's impossible to know for sure.
Right.
Rumors swirl that Carus had been struck by lightning, seen by the Romans as a sign of divine displeasure.
Oh.
Others whispered about assassination, perhaps by those closest to him.
Another Roman riddle for the ages.
Right.
So we've got a dead emperor in Persia, a power vacuum back in Rome,
Yeah.
and 2 sons who are now in line for the throne.
That's right.
Carus, before heading off to war, had appointed his eldest son Carinus as Caesar in charge of the West.
Right.
His younger son, Numerian, had accompanied him on the Persian campaign.
Correct.
Okay.
The stage is set for a potential power struggle between these two brothers, each with their own ambitions and personalities.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
Good.
This is shaping up to be a real family drama.
You just-
Who wants to go first? Carinus, the party animal in the West, or Numerian, the sickly son trying to make his way back from Persia?
Let's start with Numerian, as his story is more immediately tied to the events in the East.
Okay.
He's described as a gentle and accomplished young man, but unfortunately he's in poor health after the rigors of the Persian campaign.
So not exactly the picture of a robust Roman emperor.
Not quite. He's suffering from some kind of eye ailment that makes it difficult for him to travel or appear in public.
Right.
He's essentially confined to a litter or a darkened tent for most of the journey back to Rome.
Not ideal for an emperor who needs to project power and authority. It's practically an invitation for someone to take advantage of the situation.
And that's exactly what happens.
Oh, no.
His father-in-law, Arrius Aper, who also happens to be the Praetorian prefect,
Okay.
steps in and seizes control.
The father-in-law,
Right.
always a trustworthy figure, especially when it comes to power grabs.
Exactly.
What's Numerian doing all this time? Is he just going along with it?
He's largely incapacitated, a prisoner of his own illness, and Aper's machinations.
Right.
Aper keeps Numerian isolated, shrouding his condition in secrecy and issuing orders in his name.
Sounds like a classic case of a puppet emperor.
A very apt comparison.
Yeah.
But this charade can't last forever.
Of course not.
As the army marches back towards Rome, rumors start to spread about Numerian's true condition. The soldiers grow suspicious of Aper and his motives.
Right.
They demand to see their emperor.
The jig is up.
It is.
What happens when the truth comes out?
Well, let's just say that Numerian's journey back to Rome doesn't end well.
Oh, boy.
When the soldiers finally force their way into his tent, they find him dead.
Dead. Another one bites the dust. Natural causes, or did dear old dad-in-law decide to tie up loose ends?
Given, as always, leaves us hanging.
Of course.
He simply states that Numerian was found dead, the circumstances shrouded in mystery.
It wouldn't be a deep dive into Roman history without a healthy dose of intrigue and unanswered questions, would it?
It wouldn't.
But this sudden death creates another power vacuum.
It does.
Who steps in to fill it?
This is where we meet a figure who will become one of the most consequential rulers in Roman history. Diocletian.
Diocletian. Even I, with my admittedly limited knowledge of Roman emperors, have heard that name.
Of course.
He's a big deal. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
No, okay.
Diocletian's rise marks a major turning point in Roman history. He fundamentally reshapes the empire and ushers in a new era of stability.
Okay.
And, well, let's just say, a different kind of leadership.
All right. We'll have to delve into that more. But before we get to Diocletian's reign, we have one more loose end to tie up.
Okay.
What about Carinus, the elder brother ruling in the West?
Right.
How does he react to his brother's death and the rise of this ambitious general in the East?
It's a good question.
Sounds like we're on the verge of a major showdown.
We are indeed.
All right.
The stage is set for a clash between these two figures, a clash that will determine the future of the Roman Empire.
This is getting good. I can't wait to hear what happens next. But we'll have to save that for our next installment.
We will.
All right, we're back and ready to dive into this clash of titans. But before we get to the showdown between Diocletian and Carinus,
Right.
let's rewind and learn a bit more about this emperor in the West.
Okay.
So far, he's been a bit of an enigma.
Well, he's certainly a colorful character.
Okay.
Gibbon doesn't hold back in his portrayal of Carinus,
Right.
painting him as a man consumed by his vices, extravagant, cruel, utterly devoted to pleasure.
Okay.
He seems to embody everything that went wrong with Roman leadership in this era.
Okay, spill the tea. Give us the juicy details.
All right.
What kind of shenanigans was Carinus up to while his father and brother were fighting wars in the East?
Imagine the most decadent Roman banquet. You can multiply it by 10.
Okay.
And you might start to get a picture of Carinus' lifestyle.
Oh, wow.
He surrounded himself with sycophants, indulged in every whim, and reportedly went through 9 wives in a matter of months.
9 wives. That's a new record. Even Henry VIII would be impressed.
Right.
What was going on there? Was this some kind of power play, or was he just a hopeless romantic with a very short attention span?
It seems like a combination of both, honestly.
Okay.
Some historians suggest he was trying to secure alliances or solidify his position through these marriages. But Gibbon paints a picture of a man driven by pure hedonism.
Okay.
He wasn't interested in governing, just in indulging his every desire.
So while Rome is teetering on the brink,
Right.
Carinus is busy hosting lavish parties and racking up an impressive divorce rate.
Pretty much.
It's not exactly a recipe for inspiring leadership.
He managed to quell those rebellions and maintain control of the western provinces.
So not a total disaster.
No.
But his legacy seems more defined by his vices than his achievements.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
He's almost a caricature of a decadent Roman emperor.
He represents this trend we see in Roman history.
Yeah.
This tension between the ideals of the republic duty, simplicity, service,
Right.
and the allure of power and luxury.
Right.
Carinus chose the path of indulgence, and ultimately it led to his downfall.
Speaking of downfall, let's get back to this clash with Diocletian.
Yeah.
We've got the stern, disciplined general in the east and the pleasure-seeking emperor in the west.
Right.
This is shaping up to be a battle for the ages.
It is.
So tell me what happens.
The decisive encounter takes place in 285 AD at the Battle of the Margus near the Danube River.
Okay.
Diocletian's forces, hardened by years of campaigning in the east,
Right.
clash with Carinus' legions from the west.
This is it. The moment of truth. Who comes out on top?
The battle is fierce and bloody, a true clash of empires.
Yeah.
And in the end, Diocletian emerges victorious, solidifying his control over the Roman world.
So discipline and military prowess triumph over extravagance and decadence. Sounds like a moral victory for the good guys.
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Okay.
While Diocletian was undoubtedly a skilled general,
Right.
his victory wasn't solely due to his military genius.
Oh. Was there something else at play? Did Carinus make some strategic blunders?
It seems Carinus was betrayed by one of his own tribunes,
Okay.
a man whose wife he had
Yeah.
seduced.
Oh, the irony. The emperor who indulged in every pleasure is undone by his own lust.
Right.
It's almost poetic justice.
It's a reminder that power, no matter how absolute it seems,
That's right.
is always vulnerable.
For sure.
Carinus, in his arrogance, underestimated the resentment he had created among those closest to him.
So Diocletian wins the day not just through military might, but also through a healthy dose of palace intrigue.
You could say it.
With Carinus out of the picture, he's now the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. Right.
What does he do with this newfound power?
That's where things get really interesting. Diocletian wasn't content with simply being another emperor in a long line of rulers.
Wow.
He had a vision,
Okay.
a radical plan to reshape the very foundations of Roman governance.
Hmm.
He recognized that the old ways were no longer working.
Yeah.
The empire was too vast, the challenges too numerous for one man to handle it all.
So what does he do? Does he delegate, appoint advisors,
Right.
create a more streamlined bureaucracy?
He does all of that.
Okay.
But his most radical move, I think, is the introduction of the tetrarchy,
What's that?
a system that divides the empire into 4 administrative units,
Okay.
each ruled by a co-emperor.
Wait, 4 emperors? Isn't that just asking for trouble? More power struggles, more chaos?
It might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but Diocletian believed that dividing power was the key to saving the empire. He was essentially acknowledging that the old model of a single emperor was no longer sustainable.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Tell us more about this tetrarchy.
Sure.
How did it work in practice?
Think of it as a Roman power-sharing agreement.
Okay.
2 senior emperors, the Augusti,
Mm-hmm.
would oversee the East and the West, respectively.
Okay.
They would each appoint a junior emperor, a Caesar, to assist them and eventually succeed them.
Okay.
It was a way to ensure a smoother transition of power
Right.
and to create a more responsive and efficient system of governance.
It's like a Roman version of a presidential cabinet,
Yeah,
but with significantly more purple robes and legions involved.
exactly.
Who did Diocletian choose for these roles? Did he pick loyal allies, experienced administrators, or maybe just people he thought he could manipulate?
He was strategic in his choices,
Yeah.
selecting individuals who brought different strengths to the table.
Mm.
For the role of Augustus in the West, he chose Maximian,
Okay.
a tough, experienced soldier who had served alongside him in previous campaigns,
Makes sense.
someone he could trust to handle the military threats on the Western Front.
What about the Caesar in the West?
For that role, he picked Constantius,
Okay.
the governor of Dalmatia and a favorite of the late Emperor Carus.
Hmm.
Constantius was known for his diplomacy and his ability to navigate complex political situations.
So we've got a good cop-bad cop dynamic going on in the West,
Right.
right? What about the East? Who did Diocletian choose to share power with?
Well, Diocletian naturally took the role of Augustus in the East.
Okay.
And for his Caesar, he selected Galerius,
Okay.
another capable general with a reputation for ruthlessness, a bit like a Roman version of the enforcer.
So we've got a strategist, a soldier, a diplomat, and an enforcer.
That's right.
It's like a Roman super team, each with their own unique skill set.
It is.
But what was Diocletian's ultimate goal with this elaborate power-sharing arrangement? Was it just about practicality, or were there deeper motivations at play?
On one level, it was absolutely about addressing the practical challenges of governing such a vast and unwieldy empire.
Right.
By dividing responsibility, Diocletian hoped to create a more responsive and efficient system. But there was also a deeper philosophical shift underlying his reforms.
Okay, I'm sensing this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
All right.
What was this philosophical shift all about?
Diocletian was moving away from the idea of the emperor as a first among equals,
Okay.
a concept rooted in the old Roman Republic.
Right.
He was embracing a more overtly authoritarian model of leadership,
Okay.
emphasizing the emperor's divine right to rule and surrounding himself with elaborate court rituals and ceremonies.
So he's shifting the image of the emperor from a citizen leader to something more akin to a god king.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's a way of consolidating power,
Yeah.
projecting an aura of invincibility and discouraging dissent.
Right.
It's a trend we see in many empires throughout history.
Right.
As they grow larger and more complex, their rulers often adopt increasingly authoritarian measures to maintain control.
It's fascinating to see these parallels.
It is.
These echoes of history repeating itself in different times and places.
Yeah.
So Diocletian's Tetrarchy is more than just a bureaucratic reshuffle.
Right.
It's a fundamental reimagining of the nature of imperial power.
Precisely.
And the shift had profound consequences for the Roman Empire, both positive and negative.
It did.
On the one hand, the Tetrarchy did bring a period of relative stability and order after decades of chaos and upheaval.
Yes.
It allowed for a more effective response to external threats and internal unrest.
Right.
That stability must have been a welcome relief for the people of the empire, especially after witnessing the endless cycle of usurpers and assassinations.
Oh, absolutely.
But you mentioned negative consequences as well.
Yes.
What were some of the downsides of Diocletian's new order?
Well, the increased centralization of power and the expansion of the imperial administration came with a price,
Okay.
a more oppressive and bureaucratic state.
Oh.
There were more rules, more regulations, more taxes, and a growing sense of distance between the rulers and the ruled.
So a trade-off. Greater stability and security, but at the cost of individual freedom and local autonomy.
Exactly.
It's a dilemma that's played out throughout history.
It has.
Were there other downsides to Diocletian's reforms?
His economic policies, while well-intentioned, weren't always successful.
Okay.
His attempts to control inflation through price controls backfired,
Hmm.
leading to shortages in black markets.
Right.
And his tax reforms, while necessary to fund the expanded military and bureaucracy,
Right.
placed a heavy burden on the population,
Okay.
particularly the lower classes.
It seems that even the best laid plans can have unintended consequences.
Indeed.
And Diocletian's reign is a perfect illustration of that principle.
It is.
He was a man of great ambition and vision who genuinely believed he was acting in the best interests of the empire.
Yes.
But his reforms also laid the groundwork for the eventual division of the empire into East and West,
That's right.
a division that would have profound consequences for the course of history.
It would.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful emperors were ultimately at the mercy of larger historical forces. They could shape those forces, redirect them, but they couldn't fully control them.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to another crucial aspect of Diocletian's reign: his persecution of Christians.
Yes, this is a dark chapter in Roman history.
Right.
One that often gets overshadowed by his administrative and military reforms.
Right. The Great Persecution, as it's often called.
Yes.
It's a stark reminder that even a period of relative stability and prosperity can be marred by violence and intolerance.
Exactly. And this persecution wasn't just a fleeting episode. It was a systematic and brutal campaign
Right.
that lasted for nearly a decade
Wow.
and had a devastating impact on Christian communities throughout the empire.
So what motivated Diocletian to launch this persecution? Was it personal animosity towards Christians, or were there deeper political and social factors at play?
It's a complex question,
Yeah.
and historians still debate the exact reasons behind Diocletian's actions.
Right.
Some argue that he saw Christianity as a threat to traditional Roman values and the authority of the emperor. Others suggest that he was influenced by his advisors,
Right.
some of whom were hostile to the growing influence of Christianity within Roman society.
It's a reminder that even emperors are often influenced by the people around them, by their own prejudices and the prevailing currents of their time.
Yeah.
So what form did this persecution take? Was it limited to specific regions, or was it widespread throughout the empire?
It was widespread and brutal.
Yeah.
Churches were destroyed, scriptures were burned,
Yeah.
and Christians were arrested, tortured, and even executed.
Wow.
Diocletian aimed to eradicate Christianity from the empire completely,
Oh, wow.
and he was willing to use any means necessary to achieve that goal.
It's a chilling reminder of the dark side of Roman power.
It is.
And it's especially tragic considering that Christianity was, at its core, a religion of peace and love.
The irony isn't lost on historians.
No.
Diocletian, who sought to bring stability and order to the empire,
Right.
ended up unleashing a wave of violence and persecution that would have lasting consequences.
It's a stark illustration of how even the most well-intentioned reforms can have unintended and often devastating consequences.
Precisely.
And it raises profound questions about the nature of power, the limits of tolerance, and the enduring struggle between faith and authority.
It does.
These are themes that continue to resonate with us today, centuries after Diocletian's reign.
They do.
This is heavy stuff.
It is.
It's a stark reminder that even the most brilliant and innovative leaders can be capable of great cruelty and intolerance.
Indeed. And it's essential that we remember these darker chapters of history,
Right.
even as we acknowledge the achievements of figures like Diocletian.
So we've got a complex picture emerging here. Diocletian the reformer,
Yes.
the architect of the tetrarchy, the man who brought stability to the empire,
Right.
but also the persecutor of Christians, the architect of a more authoritarian state.
It's a reminder that history is rarely black and white.
Yeah.
Even the most influential figures are products of their time,
Right.
capable of both great and terrible things.
Yeah.
And it's through studying these complexities, these contradictions,
Right.
that we can gain a deeper understanding of the past and its enduring relevance to our own lives.
Well, I think we've given our listener plenty to ponder.
I hope so.
But we're not quite finished with Diocletian's story yet, are we?
No, we're not.
There's still the matter of his abdication,
Right.
his retreat from power, and the eventual fate of his carefully crafted tetrarchy.
You're right. And that's where we'll pick up in our next installment.
Okay.
The story of Diocletian's final years is as intriguing and unexpected as his rise to power. It's a story that takes us from the heights of imperial authority to the quiet solitude of a palace garden. A journey that reveals the man behind the mask of power.
I can't wait to hear it.
Me neither.
It seems that even in retirement, Diocletian couldn't escape the drama and intrigue that had defined his reign.
True indeed. The seeds of conflict he had sown would continue to bear fruit long after he stepped down from the imperial throne.
Right.
But we'll save those details for our final chapter.
Okay, cliffhanger alert. We'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive into the reign of Diocletian and the lasting legacy of his reforms.
We will.
Until then, keep exploring those dusty history books and pondering those eternal questions about power, ambition, and the human condition. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Roman emperors. We've journeyed through chaos and intrigue, met larger-than-life personalities, and explored the complexities of Diocletian's reign.
It's been quite the journey.
It has. Now it's time to unravel the final chapter of his story.
Okay.
We left off with Diocletian stepping down from power,
Yes.
a move almost unheard of in the annals of Roman history.
It's a fascinating turn of events, especially considering his ambitious nature
Right.
and the lengths he went to reshape the empire.
Yeah. In 305 AD, after 2 decades at the helm,
Right.
Diocletian does something extraordinary.
He does.
He voluntarily abdicates, relinquishing his imperial authority
Right.
and retreating to his palace in Dalmatia.
That's right.
Voluntarily? You're telling me he just walked away from all that power? No plots, no assassinations, no forced retirement.
It does seem improbable, doesn't it?
It does.
Especially given that cutthroat world of Roman politics.
Right.
But Gibbon suggests that Diocletian was genuinely weary of the burdens of rule. He was in poor health, perhaps disillusioned by that endless cycle of wars and rebellions.
Yeah.
He had achieved his goals, restoring stability to the empire,
Right.
implementing his reforms, even securing the succession through his carefully crafted tetrarchy.
Right.
Perhaps he felt it was time to enjoy the fruits of his labor.
It's a fascinating psychological puzzle.
It is.
What drives a man to reach the pinnacle of power, only to walk away from it all? Was it a genuine desire for peace and solitude? A fear of the dangers inherent in wielding such immense authority? Or perhaps a sense that he had accomplished all he set out to do?
Gibbon doesn't offer a definitive answer, but he does hint at Diocletian's disillusionment.
Okay.
He quotes a letter allegedly written by Diocletian to Maximian, his co-emperor,
Go. Right.
in which he describes the joys of his retirement, tending to his gardens enjoying the simple pleasures of life.
Right.
If you could see the cabbages which I have planted with my own hands at Salona, he allegedly wrote,
Wow.
you would no longer talk to me of empire.
That's an incredible image.
It is.
The mighty Diocletian, the man who reshaped the Roman world, finding contentment in growing vegetables.
Right.
It challenges our assumptions about ambition, power, and what it truly means to live a meaningful life.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
It suggests that even those who wield immense power can find solace in simple things.
But of course, history rarely unfolds according to neat and tidy plans.
It doesn't.
Even those crafted by emperors.
That's right.
Right, because even though Diocletian steps down and tries to enjoy his retirement, his tetrarchy doesn't exactly go according to plan, does it?
Not quite.
Okay.
Diocletian envisioned a smooth transition of power.
Right.
The Augusti would abdicate, the Caesars would step into their roles, and new Caesars would be appointed. A tidy system of succession, designed to avoid the chaos and instability that had plagued the empire in previous decades.
It sounds like a well-oiled machine,
It does.
at least in theory.
On paper.
But we've already seen that power in Rome was a slippery thing, prone to unexpected shifts and opportunistic grabs.
It was.
What goes wrong?
Well, human ambition and rivalry have a way of disrupting even the most carefully crafted plans.
Of course.
Diocletian's abdication creates a power vacuum,
Yeah.
and the various figures within the tetrarchy, along with their supporters and ambitious relatives, begin maneuvering for position.
So the seeds of conflict are sown, even as Diocletian is tending his cabbages in Dalmatia.
They are.
What happens next? Does the tetrarchy collapse completely?
It doesn't fall apart immediately,
Okay.
but cracks begin to appear. There are disputes over the succession, challenges to authority,
Right.
and eventually, open warfare erupts between the various contenders for power.
So much for a peaceful transition. It seems that the Roman Empire just couldn't escape the cycle of violence and intrigue. It couldn't.
No matter how carefully its leaders tried to manage things,
It seems that way.
who emerges from this power struggle?
Oh.
Who inherits Diocletian's legacy?
The story of the Tetrarchy's demise is complex and involves multiple players.
Right.
But one figure stands out. Constantine.
Constantine.
The son of Constantius, the Caesar who had ruled in the West.
Ah, Constantine. Now that's a name even I recognize.
Yes.
He's the one who converts to Christianity, makes it the official religion of the Roman Empire, moves the capital to Constantinople. A real game changer.
It does.
So the son of the diplomat emperor ends up becoming one of the most powerful and transformative figures in Roman history.
That's right.
It seems like the apple didn't fall far from the tree, even if it rolled in a different direction.
Exactly. And Constantine's story is a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and upheaval, opportunity can arise. He skillfully navigates the treacherous waters of Roman politics,
Right.
outmaneuvers his rivals, and ultimately reunifies the empire under his rule. It's almost as if Diocletian's attempt to impose order and stability through the Tetrarchy inadvertently paved the way for a new kind of emperor,
Yes.
one who would wield even greater power and influence than he ever did.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
It is.
Diocletian tries to divide power to create a more balanced and manageable system.
Yeah.
But in doing so, he sets in motion a chain of events that ultimately leads to the rise of an even more powerful and centralized figure in Constantine.
It's a reminder that history is full of unintended consequences, even for those who think they're in control.
Absolutely.
But what about Diocletian? He's back in his palace gardens, presumably oblivious to the turmoil engulfing the empire he once ruled.
Right.
What does he think of all this?
We can only speculate, of course.
Yeah.
Gibbon suggests that Diocletian was content in his retirement, focused on his gardens, and removed from the world of politics. But other historians paint a different picture,
Okay.
suggesting that he was deeply troubled by the collapse of his tetrarchy
Yeah.
and the ensuing power struggles.
It's hard to imagine him simply ignoring the events that were reshaping the empire he had devoted his life to building.
It is.
Did he try to intervene? To offer advice? To steer things back on course?
There are accounts of delegations visiting Diocletian, seeking his guidance or urging him to return to power.
Right.
But he reportedly refused, famously saying, "If you could show the man who wears the purple the cabbages I have planted with my own hands at Salona, he would no longer envy my retirement."
It's a powerful statement.
It is.
A rejection of the allure of power.
Right.
And a declaration of contentment with a simpler life.
Absolutely.
But it's also a poignant reminder of the ephemeral nature of power,
It is.
even for those who wield it with such skill and determination as Diocletian did.
Diocletian's story is ultimately a tragedy, in the classical sense.
Yeah.
He achieves greatness, reshapes the world according to his vision, but in the end, he's unable to control the forces he has unleashed. His carefully crafted system collapses, his successors tear each other apart, and the empire he sought to preserve is forever changed.
It's a sobering reminder that even the most ambitious and visionary leaders are subject to the whims of fate and the unpredictable currents of history.
Absolutely, and that brings us back to the value of studying history.
Yes.
It allows us to explore these complexities,
Yeah.
to see how individuals, even emperors, are both shaped by and shape the course of events.
It's a reminder that the past is never truly past.
It's an
It echoes in our present,
Yes.
shaping our understanding of power, ambition, and the human condition.
Absolutely.
What a journey it's been. We've traversed the tumultuous landscape of Roman history,
We have.
from the chaos of the 3rd century crisis to the rise and fall of Diocletian's tetrarchy.
A long
We've witnessed the interplay of ambition, power, and fate,
We have.
and gained, I think, a deeper appreciation for the complexities of Roman leadership.
For sure.
I think we've given our listener plenty to chew on, plenty to spark their own explorations into the world of ancient Rome.
Indeed. And I would encourage our listener to consider this. How does Diocletian's story resonate with our own time? Do we see echoes of his challenges, his triumphs, his failures, and the leaders and events of our own world?
That's a good question.
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
For in the words of the Roman philosopher Cicero, history is the witness of the times, the light of truth, the life of memory, the teacher of life, the messenger of antiquity.
Beautifully put. And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive.
Sounds good.
Until our next exploration of history's hidden depths, keep those minds curious and those imaginations fired up.